Years. Some of us in the industry have been waiting years for the long-rumored Pixel Watch. Now that it's here, expectations are naturally high. After all, Google had all that time to fine-tune its first smartwatch, and everyone's been anxious to see if this could be the product that rivals the Apple Watch. The Pixel Watch doesn't just have an eye-catching design, but the software also seems promising. Wear OS has been a mess, but by collaborating with Samsung and finally integrating Fitbit's health tracking features, Google may have addressed its greatest weaknesses. Of all the things about the Pixel Watch, Google was most eager to show off its design, and rightly so. The Pixel Watch's case is a thing of beauty. In pictures, it's almost nondescript. It's just a plain round face with what appear to be pretty thick bezels. In person though, the Pixel Watch catches light at some angles in a way that makes it look elegant and, pardon the cliche, like jewelry. Most importantly, for a person who's into tactile sensations like I am, the Pixel Watch just feels so good. I love flipping it over and over in my palm like it's a smooth, shiny pebble. There's something about the domed shape and the glossy finish that makes swiping across the interface feel luxurious. On the right edge sits a dial that almost twinkles in the sun, along with a button above it that pulls up recent apps. In my few days with the Pixel Watch, I've used this latter button exactly once. It requires more force to depress than its counterpart on the Apple Watch, which sits below the digital crown and is more obvious. I rarely used Apple's button too, so this is not a ding on Google. Unlike most other Android watches, the Pixel Watch doesn't have lugs. Instead, straps attach directly to the case via a mechanism that Google describes as similar to the lens locking system on DSLR cameras. To connect a band, you push one end of it into a button at the bottom of the groove and slide it in. To remove, you push the catch on the side and twist it off. It took a bit of getting used to, and I still can't say I've nailed the process, but I also haven't swapped bands yet. I'm sure whenever I receive different straps, like the gorgeous metal mesh or the comfy stretch option, that I'll be performing this change a lot. I am pretty impressed by the bands that Google has made. Sure, they're basically adaptations of options that Apple offers, like the Milanese loop or Solo loop. But paired with Google's round case, these look like conventional watches and wouldn't seem out of place at formal, fashion-forward events. While the 41mm case sits nicely on my relatively petite wrist, I wish Google had made a larger version. I think the Pixel Watch looks good on most arms, but there are people who prefer a bigger screen. When it comes to something as personal as a wearable, one size does not fit all. While it seems like Google may have pretty much nailed the hardware, one of the biggest problems plaguing Wear OS watches in the past was their namesake, Wear OS. Google software was criticized for everything, from its overly swipe-heavy navigation to being too basic. When the company teamed up with Samsung to co-engineer Wear OS 3 last year, it was able to bring performance and power consumption improvements. That laid the groundwork for it to add a more robust health and activity tracking system with Fitbit, which it completed its purchase of in January last year. The result is Wear OS 3.5, Google's own expression of its smartwatch software. This interface is very familiar in many ways. It's not a huge departure from the Tizen-esque platform that we saw last year on the Galaxy Watch 5. You can download music to stream offline from the Pixel Watch, get turn-by-turn maps directions, remotely control your camera, and ask the assistant to set timers or tell you the weather. You can also control your Google Home devices from your wrist. The main differences are Google's new watch faces and the Fitbit integrations. I wish the Fitbit features were better meshed into Wear OS. It feels like a missed opportunity or some sort of reluctance to give up the Fitbit logo and branding. For Fitbit fans, this might be familiar and welcome. But for those expecting a pure Google experience, it can be jarring. While the constant presence of Fitbit branding throughout the system makes the fitness and health tracking features feel disjointed, it was nice to see Wear OS finally deliver stand reminders. During my testing, the Pixel Watch and the Apple Watch Ultra generally reminded me at the exact same time that I needed to get off my butt and walk around to meet my movement goals. It was also nice to see things that Fitbit devices never had, like notifications for messages from basically any app on your phone, as well as the ability to reply to messages using a keyboard, dictation, emojis, or suggested responses. I particularly like Google's new watch faces, some of which are also familiar because they're quite similar to Apple's. As a narcissist, my favorite is the Photos option, which lets you choose up to 30 pictures from Google Photos to set as your background. I also enjoy the complication-heavy faces like Utility and Index, which let you basically surround the clock with up to 5 fields. Because most of these use a black background, they tend to blend nicely into the bezel, making those borders seem invisible. But the Photos face makes the thick edges painfully obvious. One of the pictures I picked is so cramped that the top of my friends' faces are cut off and we look extra squished together. Unlike the Apple Watch, the Pixel doesn't let you move and scale your pictures. Since I mostly use a non-Photos face, the thick bezels don't bother me too much. Every bit of information I want to see is easy to read, and the colorful text on black background is great for readability. I sometimes wish fonts were bigger or thicker, but by and large, I didn't have trouble. That said, setting up your Pixel Watch and monitoring your data through your phone is very similar to the experience on Samsung and Apple devices. On all three, you have a separate app to do things like customize watch faces, organize the order of your tiles, and choose which apps can send notifications to your wrist. To view your exercise or sleep data, you'd have to go into each company's respective health app, or in the Pixel Watch's case, Fitbit. These are all pretty typical, other than Google's app not actually being named Google Health. There's good and bad news with the Pixel Watch basically relying on Fitbit's system to deliver health and fitness tracking, and I fear the bad may outweigh the good. Let's start with the positive. Fitbit has arguably the best wellness tracking system around. It was one of the first to start tracking your heart rate during your sleep to determine what zones you were in. It was also among the earliest to introduce cycle tracking, and its workout page does a great job of showing what cardio zones you're in through a ring around the screen. Fitbit is one of the few companies in the space that makes sure to incorporate rest and recovery into its depiction of your overall well-being, giving you a readiness score based on your sleep and stress data. And by virtue of being a pioneer in the fitness tracker industry, Fitbit also has comprehensive knowledge of how to translate user behavior and heart rate info into useful insights and features. If we're using the industry's leading smartwatches as the benchmark here, then the Pixel Watch performs as expected. The bad news is while the Pixel Watch benefits from Fitbit's expertise, it also suffers from the syncing issues that plague the company's older devices. Often, my data would take so long to show up on the watch or app that I thought it hadn't tracked any activity or sleep at all. On Friday night, the Apple Watch Ultra logged my disappointingly short night of 3 hours and 50 minutes. It took the Pixel Watch until Sunday afternoon before that session showed up in the Fitbit app. My overnight data for Sunday night also took at least 10 minutes to reflect in the app, which isn't too bad, but compared to the instant syncing of the Apple Watch and the iPhone, it felt like forever. Similarly, the results of an outdoor walk on Sunday did not appear in the Fitbit app until hours later, causing me to panic about my progress in a very friendly competition. Also, while Samsung and Apple will actually alert you when they notice you've been walking or exercising for a while, the Pixel Watch remains quiet. In fact, I thought it was malfunctioning and not detecting my brisk mile, and I started to get quite angry. It wasn't until much later when the walk showed up in the Fitbit app that I realized it had actually counted my activity. Once I got used to the gaslighting, I started to enjoy looking at my data in the Fitbit app. You can tap into pretty much every metric to get a detailed view of your activity over the last 24 hours. For some pieces of data though, like your breathing rate, resting heart rate, and heart rate variation, you'll need to pay the monthly $10 for the Fitbit Premium subscription to see info beyond a week. And even then, you'll only see the last 90 days of your trends and personal ranges. This, to me, is the worst thing about the Fitbit integration. When I imagined what the Pixel Watch would deliver, I never expected any of my long-term data to be paywalled. I was especially dismayed to learn that the sleep score and data about time spent in various sleep zones would also be locked behind Premium, and that basic users would only see how much time they spent asleep. I could see why Fitbit might keep their best-in-class sleep tracking behind a subscription fee if the competition wasn't offering anything similar. But even Apple, which has been the worst at sleep tracking, now delivers the same reports for free. And Samsung has been doing it for years. The most troubling and disappointing aspect of the Pixel Watch is its battery life. When Google promised 24-hour runtime on this device, there must have been a lot of caveats. I generally got through about 12 hours with the watch before I started getting low power warnings. And that's typically with always-on display enabled and tracking at least 3 workouts a day, 2 of those being outdoor walks using GPS. When I left my companion phone at home, meaning I didn't get served notifications as often, I saw a few hours more. This sort of battery life would be fine if you don't expect to use the Pixel Watch to track your sleep. But not only does it usually die before I go to bed, Google also states that you need to have at least a 30% charge before it can log your results overnight. Unfortunately, with Apple and Samsung watches typically clocking close to 2 days, if not more, Google's smartwatch still lags in this department. I like the Pixel Watch, but I'm not in love with it. I'm tempted by its lustrous appearance, its bodacious curves, and its general shininess. It's a perfectly capable smartwatch that does the things modern smartwatches do, and it does many of them well. But short battery life and odd Fitbit-related choices take the Pixel Watch from reliable companion to problematic partner. For more in-depth reviews of smartwatches, laptops, tablets, and more, make sure you subscribe to Engadget. And until next time, keep calm and stay well.